What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the Premier League match between Manchester City and Chelsea. We're going to look how Manchester City just narrowly beat Chelsea to keep them in this title race and keep them only 5 points behind Arsenal as we approach about halfway through the season. So before we get into the tactics behind Manchester City that gave them the edge, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon. There's links in the description below. I'm using Keyframe to make this video. That is also in the description. And check out my new tactics course. All those things are in the description below. Let's get right into the tactics. So Manchester City started the game in a unique fashion. They had some rotations that they hadn't used before, or they don't use that often. This saw Rodri play as a central defender in the defensive phase and saw him play as a holding midfielder in the offensive phase of the game. We see Kyle Walker and Nathan Ake playing as wide central defenders off of the shoulder of the Chelsea first line of pressure, and it's very important that we note that they play off the shoulder and are oriented towards Chelsea players and not spatially oriented. This gives them a different dynamic than if they had just set their structure in the half spaces and had each occupation of the central corridors, but they're more oriented to their opponents so they can move them more effectively. To start the game, the double pivot was created by the jumping Rodri from central defense and Bernardo Silva dropping from higher positions. So these two players look to play between each of the players of the first line of the Chelsea press, affecting them and narrowing them as well. Now with Bernardo Silva, they had the unique quality that didn't pan out as we thought it might until Rico Lewis came into the game. So his ability to go higher up the field, play between the lines, partner with Kevin De Bruyne, allowing Kevin De Bruyne to occupy the half space and use the wide area if needed, was the intention from the start. This would allow John Stones to dribble and progress diagonally to affect the two players from the Chelsea first line of pressure. This would then release the wide area, allow Kevin De Bruyne to get on the ball, or allow Bernardo Silva to get on the ball higher up the field, but this is not how it panned out, at least in the first part of the match. The players between the line were Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne, and these players played a crucial role looking to create superiority against the Chelsea two holding midfielders, Kovacic and Hakim Ziyech, inverting in the defensive part to play in a deeper role. This saw Zakaria jump higher up the field to then create access and help prevent the double pivot from Manchester City affect the game too much. Now we'll see when John Stones looks to progress the ball via dribbling, he's able to dribble forward, affect the first line of this Chelsea press, and release the wide area for Kyle Walker to then become free. Because of the overloads Manchester City have in the central areas, with Bernardo Silva staying deeper, Rodri jumping in a higher position, creating the double pivot, allowing the room and creating the space for John Stones to progress the ball, affect the first line. It'll even narrow Chelsea's shape further, with players like Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne playing through the half spaces and between the fullback and center back for Chelsea, making their shape very narrow out of possession. So this would narrow the fullback Cucurella and allow Kyle Walker to become free, allowing for diagonal passes to arrive at Kyle Walker and looking to exploit 2 versus 1s, looking to get into the half space in behind the back line. Now in the second half, after changes were made, the first spell of changes saw their back line shift and the personnel change, so it'd still be the same concepts, but slightly different qualities with different players coming into the game. Then we see the double pivot still keep the same shape in a 4-man midfield, looking to overload the two holding midfielders for Chelsea and creating superiority just behind the front four for Chelsea. So with the Chelsea substitutions and the massive amount of changes they were forced to make in the game, changed their shape and how they would look to play. And it posed different challenges for Manchester City, with the Manchester City players still playing off the shoulder of the front line of Chelsea. It also put them a little bit further from the double pivot and the attacking midfielders, with more central players in the first line. It gave Chelsea more of a presence around the holding midfielders and relied on wide areas in the half spaces more to attack the game. This would often separate Kovacic from his central midfield pair, creating space between the lines, which Haaland doesn't really access. That's not really his game, but it created opportunities between the lines for players like Rico Lewis to get higher up the field and overload these two players. So when Lewis would go higher up the field, we would create a 3 versus 2 in advanced positions against the 2 holding midfielders for Chelsea. Then Rodri was able to get on the ball because of more players higher up the field. Lewis would pin the midfielders back a little bit more, creating more space for the initial build up from Manchester City and getting Rodri on the ball. This would then give them a 3 versus 2 overload, allowing Rodri to find these players in advanced areas with diagonal passes and always have the central defenders to then jump further forward to get out of the cover shadow of the Chelsea players, or using the wide areas as a failsafe if these avenues become blocked. So those were the main tactical changes Manchester City looked to progress and create superiority against Chelsea, and getting into the box, creating crosses, using 2 versus 1s with the half spaces against the Chelsea fullbacks was also the next step in their possession to then get them dangerous chances, which became much more difficult for them, especially when Chelsea re-energized with substitutions in the second half. So let me know in the comments below what you think of the video and who you think will win the Premier League title this season.